Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for joining us today, especially today of all days, really, the start of lockdown 2.0 in the UK, the conclusion of a fairly entertaining US presidential race, and of course bonfire night. So we're very pleased that you could join us both. Introductions first of all. My name's James. I'm one of the sales team at CTS. I'm delighted to be able to welcome my co-host for today, Will from RIAA Barker Gillette, William Roberts-Phelps.
Morning all.
Kindly agreed to answer some questions around the firm's IT strategy, decisions that they've made in recent times, how they've coped through COVID, and very much where they plan to move the firm going forward. So Will, perhaps you can introduce yourself to begin with, a little bit about yourself, the firm, and a bit of an overview before we start.
Sure. Morning all. As James says, I'm Will. RIAA Barker Gillette are a London-based firm. In normal times, we're just off Wigmore Street in the West End. Right now, we're all over the country. So we're multi-service, mainly dispute. I'm in the family department. Then we have company, commercial, and property teams. But we are about 30 lawyers, 50 staff in total. So sort of mid-sized firm. Sort of small to mid, I suppose, and we've been going for about 35 years. We took on a private client department separately in sort of 2014, 2015, and I joined the firm in 2018. So day to day, I'm a family solicitor, but also our notional IT manager. Not sure quite how I ended up with the role. One of the partners went on a sabbatical, and I got tapped on the shoulder to say, we think you'd be good at it, can you help? Probably because I'd mentioned a little bit too often that I quite like sort of helping out with IT and have a bit of an interest in case management systems, etc. So to my detriment, I'm now here in this role. But yeah, I think that's a bit of a background for where I am for now.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Will. So just before we properly get started, hopefully you can all see within your panel there's a questions tab. So anything, as I said, Will and I have prepared some things to talk about over the next 20-25 minutes. But if there's anything specific anyone would like to ask or get a bit more of a kind of flavour on, that questions tab is on the right hand side, which we can monitor and make sure we go into great detail on anything about that. So basically, to start then, Will, pretty simple one. In terms of yourselves and the firm, what was it that made you come to CTS, look at the cloud, and basically what has that enabled you to do?
Yeah, so we were finding that we already had quite a lot of users that were already starting to work from home and be more flexible. We've got a number of partners that either live overseas or live in sort of rural parts of the country. So we wanted to have a sort of fully cloud-based system. So that was the sort of the big aim. And then the big push to really get on with it was we were encountering major issues with our previous incumbents, who I won't name, but what we effectively had was a hosting provider and then a separate data storage company. And as some people on the webinar might have experienced, if you've got two people sort of overlapping in that way, they often try and blame each other, and it was getting very difficult when we were having outages or issues to get to the bottom of what was actually causing it, and we were going round and round in circles, and we didn't have one sort of point of contact. So that was a big focus for our move.
So did that very much kind of spur the change then? That kind of disconnect between firm and provider, it was taking long to get issues.
We were already looking at a few options and sort of saying it was something we should look at, and it's one of those things, it's on the to-do list and never quite gets up the top. And then in about March last year, I think it was, we had, so March 2019, we had about a 3-day outage, complete system outage. And as you can imagine, we had lawyers going apoplectic, and no one could tell us the answer. It took weeks to get to the bottom of it. I'm not sure we ever really did, but that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. And we just really then got on with getting out for some proposals and finding out what else is out on the market that could help us.
I suppose in your position as kind of IT manager and lawyer, that you must have seen very much both sides of the fence there in terms of the difficulties associated.
Yeah, it was a very uncomfortable few days, that's for sure, because everyone just kept coming in. That was when you were, berating the fact that you were still office based, because everyone was coming into your room saying, "Is it fixed yet? Is it fixed yet?"
Yeah.
And all you can do is just smile and wave.
That's it. So you mentioned office there. It's kind of the topic we don't really want to talk about, but we can't avoid. So obviously, beginning of March arrived, COVID hit, lockdown ensued. How did you cope as a business? What was the kind of full switch to agile working like, and how were you positioned?
We actually, touch wood, have said we've done it really well. With having gone to CTS and got our sort of hosting platform sorted, and then rolling out proper, we use Surface Pro laptops for all staff. It just meant that when the announcement came, we literally just picked up laptops and moved home. And there were a few, obviously people aren't necessarily as well set up at home as they would be for when they do it occasionally. We then, got extra monitors sorted and all of that kind of stuff. But in the initial transition, the downtime was really quite limited because of being a cloud system.
Perfect. So in terms of any major challenges then, was it just kind of logistical and getting people home and sort of
it was
that work was possible?
Yeah, so we arranged a bit of a project team to get back into the office very safely, masks on, gather up as much kit as possible, and then we basically did delivery drop-offs either with couriers or with staff who lived locally, just to get them their kit, dropped it on the doorstep, said hello. That was the main issue, was literal just logistics rather than any IT issues. A lot of people were able just to carry straight back on. The only thing for us it did delay was we were due to go live with our new case management software on the first week of April.
Right.
And so obviously we hit pause on that because obviously we had in-office training all lined up and everything, but then wasn't going to be able to take place. So we then we went and did that in September instead.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Not something that would be particularly easy. So, in terms of the kind of whole process throughout lockdown, did you start to get people back into the office as restrictions eased at all, or have you been pretty much remote working for the entire 7 months?
No, we've stayed completely remote. We've made the office as COVID secure as we can for meetings if people do need them, but there hasn't been a real appetite for anyone to go back in. I think our partners are taking a very risk-adverse approach, and I think they are able to do that because of how well everything has worked remotely. I think they've probably looked at people's billing and department performances and factoring in obviously economic impact on some of those departments, particularly our perhaps sort of property teams, as I'm sure others are experiencing. There's been a bit of fluctuation, but overall they're quite happy with how the firm are progressing. So stay where we are, and I think everyone was fairly confident we might find ourselves in lockdown 2.0. So
yeah, that's it. And obviously we don't know, and things are changing regularly, but I think it's fairly well accepted now that this month perhaps won't be the last one either, whether it's before Christmas where we get to see friends and family, and then January we go back in again. So I think, like yourselves and firms that we're speaking to regularly have identified this is not a short-term measure now. This is going to be with us for quite some time, and sticking plasters over things is not really going to be a sustainable long-term approach.
Yeah, it's
sorry, we'll carry on.
No, it's fine. Go on, after you.
So basically, you mentioned there about the implementation of a new case management system, and obviously the challenges that comes with that. Just keen to understand what kind of utilizing CTS and our cloud platform, and obviously what we do and how we interact with you. Did it facilitate kind of any projects that you had planned or anything else that you were looking to do as a business?
So one of the big reasons why CTS were chosen out of the different companies we approached was we sort of did it the other way around. We'd kind of already chosen or had a very clear idea of what our practice management system was going to be, and CTS had a number of clients who are already using Proclaim, and therefore we've basically engaged with you guys to build us the system ready for Proclaim to arrive. Obviously meant to arrive in April, didn't come into September, but that wasn't anyone's fault other than COVID. So yeah, that's been helpful. I mean, the system side of it's held up well, and as I'm sure anybody on the call who's gone through large scale practice management changes, there's going to be teething issues, and we had a couple of big ones in the first few weeks, but we pushed through them. We had a brilliant team in the office, led by my colleague Penny, who worked through all of those issues. A lot of the big ones. We've still got the odd snag here or there, don't get me wrong, but and CTS were integral to that, because some of it were CTS providing their knowledge as to what might be the problems, and others were Proclaim needing to make changes to our environment and having to get those through onto the master image and updates and all the rest of it, and CTS were good with that as well. And we had a few days where we had a couple of engineers from CTS, a couple of engineers from Proclaim on calls, just working through those points, and that was a really long but ultimately successful exercise.
Got the job done. So other things then, obviously, as we are currently, webinars and Skype and Zoom and Teams calls is very much the norm now. So
yeah,
what else have you kind of utilized through the cloud with these kind of collaboration tools, getting things automated, potentially going paperless, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Again, we were quite lucky. It makes it sound like we were really ahead of the curve, but I would say we were probably pretty paper light. One department, slight exception to that, but everyone else is pretty paper light, so it wasn't too taxing for us from that side of things. The big things that I think we've had to look at since lockdown, for example, in my sector, the family courts have adapted quite quickly to virtual hearings. We've had practice directions about the use of e-bundles and different softwares being utilized for video hearings and things. So it's just managing our users through those changes in their own departments. So obviously I've managed my own and helped my department. Dispute have come across some different challenges with their bundles, but it's now feeling like we're very competent in that sort of virtual hearing world, which a lot of people are saying, and I agree, even post-COVID, will we go back to all flocking into court buildings and things again, or will we be, for simple sort of directions hearings, will they leave you virtual? In that case, you need to have the capability. And so it's not just a short-term, we've seen it as not just a short-term investment for during COVID, it's a longer term investment to get our users more au fait with video technologies, e-bundling softwares. They've basically been forced paperless, so it's finished off a good few of the printers that are in the office that aren't going to be needed anymore. So our copier company aren't best thrilled with us, but that they're going to struggle on a lot of places, I suspect, because everyone's in a similar position.
Yeah. So as you say, it's more of a proper transition to a new way of working than something short term that we think will go back to potentially how things always were. No, completely. So I don't know if you'll be able to tell us this, or if there's any kind of tangible stats or evidence to back this up, but I'm keen to understand if there's any way that you've been able to quantify the value that having a really robust and up-to-date IT system has kind of provided, cost savings, increased agility, as we've talked about, reduced security issues, anything like that you can think of?
So I think there's probably two limbs to that. The one is, by having the robust system, we didn't suffer any loss in cash flow as a result of the lockdown, because we were able to pick up our laptops, get home, plug back in, carry on billing, which is what the partners want all of our lawyers to be able to do. So that would have been a loss and an issue had we not had the systems in place. And then I think it's going forward. We've got the excuse me. We've now got an infrastructure which has required a bit of investment. You know, upgrading laptops and getting sort of slightly more. You know, obviously the case management software wasn't cheap, but you know, it's a long-term investment from that side of things. But now that we've got that, there will be a sort of secondary saving to come, I suspect, because if it hasn't started already, there probably is going to be a conversation at partnership level as to whether we need to retain 4 floors of prime office space in the West End of London. You know, because a lot of people who were originally a little bit naysayers about working from home have obviously had to do it, realized it doesn't mean everyone's slacking. People are still billing, we are still being able to meet our clients' needs, etc. So that would be a massive saving even if we say take a third off our square footage and look to something a little bit more, whether a hot desk environment or something a little bit more flexible. That would be a big saving. And then there's sort of minor ones as well. So as I sort of jokingly said just now, we're not going to need as many printers. We've got a large amount of printers per floor, and these ones that we're just not going to need. And I don't know the stats for our paper costs, our ink costs, our stationery costs at the moment, but I imagine there's going to be a healthy saving there. At the moment, that's been filled by buying new laptops and making sure we've got enough mice everywhere and keyboards and all that kind of thing. But over the course of time, it'll pay for itself.
Yeah, no, sounds good. And so in terms then of moving forward, what are the kind of wider businesses sort of plans and strategy as we hopefully exit COVID fairly soon? And basically, how are you going to utilize IT to really support that?
I think we will see a lot more of our staff doing either equal time home and office, or probably even majority home and office. And we will look to, there will still be a real need as someone who works in sort of individual legal services. I still have a lot of clients who say, oh, they would prefer to come and meet me face to face. So we're always going to want to have a nice office space, a nice client experience for them. But for the engine room of the firm, they don't all need to be trotting in, doing the commute. Some people, myself, I've got an hour and a half door to door to get to the office from where I am each way. So even if 3 days of the week you're cutting that out, that's a lot of time being saved. And even if I put 2/3 of that on the clock, my managing partner is going to be pretty pleased with those stats. So I think whether we formally change employment contracts so people have got more flexibility, I'm not sure, but we're certainly going to have the IT that enables us to do it. There's a debate about at the moment whether you can have sort of hot desk environments with COVID, but looking beyond that, I think that's certainly something we'd want to look at. And the next big change that we're about to make is to sort of move our landlines to an application on our mobiles rather than having physical landlines in the office. So again, people can just have their mobile and their laptop, and as far as their clients are concerned, they are in the office, they are engaged, doesn't matter where they are, they're doing their work. That's fine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms then, obviously, whether or not there is or isn't, but do you have any sort of major further projects that you're looking to get on with? And obviously we've talked about the case management system. Are there any other sort of big changes afoot, or is it a case of let's see where we are post this current situation and where we look to move the business forward?
Yeah, I think we will look to see how we get through this. I think not having an end date, as everyone is grappling with, is quite tricky. And then we'll see. I think if an office move comes about, that'll obviously be a busy time for IT to move infrastructure. But obviously we haven't got large amounts of servers that have to be moved or anything like that. So that, from my point of view, is going to be a lot easier than it would have been 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, and as you say, that could be a key change, couldn't it, as we move forward, how firms do decide to utilize square footage, whether it's shared meeting space or moving to more different remote locations. It is going to have a big impact.
Yeah, Yeah, we've also got to go careful because from our user point of view, we've put them through quite a lot of change in the last 18 months, I suppose, with CTS. I mean, I suppose hosting provider doesn't massively impact users day to day. It's just, for them, it's just a slightly different environment they're logging into. They just want it to work. And then with Proclaim change, that has been huge. So we had a conversation about it the other day where you don't want to try and put too many changes through your staff, particularly at the moment. We want to be quite careful with that. So we won't be making anything drastically different to the system for a little while. Just sort of slight improvements, identifying where we can make their lives a little bit easier. And yeah, the sort of office change, whether that's within our existing building or in a new one, to make sure that then works for what the new, more flexible environment's going to be. Because it might be that as a firm now, it would be very easy for us to grow our departments. If certain departments are doing really well, as some of them are, then you can recruit new lawyers, and you don't necessarily need to immediately be able to have to find them square footage. So we could get ourselves to 70, 80 staff without having to move. So that's the other way of looking at it, I suppose.
And then obviously the benefits of having an IT platform in place and a partner like CTS would again facilitate that onboarding perhaps easier than if it was all through on premise.
Yeah, it's just clicks of buttons and dispatching a laptop, which, not to belittle the work that you guys do at your end, but from my point of view, that's ultimately why I'm able to manage doing the sort of IT role and being a full-time fee earner, because CTS do take quite a lot of the burden off me.
The kind of day-to-day stuff that you don't really want to be spending too much time.
So we have one of my colleagues, Mark, is our IT assistant. So he deals with sort of the day-to-day IT queries, and he does a lot of the liaising with the CTS support desk. And I don't really get involved too much with that. If I need to, or if he's on away, I will. But that works really, really well, because his technical knowledge is improving, but CTS are actually sort of helping him with that, because as errors or issues occur for different users, we learn, we prevent them from happening again, and move forward. It's been really good from that side of things.
Perfect, and that leads me on nicely. And try not to see this as a shameless plug, but what advice would you give to firms who were potentially looking at sort of joining with an IT partner, choosing a kind of, whether it be an MSP or someone to partner with? Is there any advice you give from your differing experiences, let's say, of previous providers?
Obviously, the obvious answer that James wants me to give is CTS, but it is having that one, not to belittle it, but it is that one-stop solution. So now any problem that arises with our IT environment, we get in touch with CTS, and I find the portal really helpful, actually, because I can then see all the different tickets that people are raising. I can make sure that CTS are pulling their finger out when they need to, and that makes life a lot easier. But for people going out to look at different proposals, we looked at quite a few, and as I say, the deciding factor for us was the sort of presentation of the support environment, because we only have one IT assistant who's growing in technical ability, so we really needed that technical support day to day, and the tie-in with our practice management software. But if I had sort of one thing to ask immediately when you go and speak to an MSP, is make sure they are au fait with your big items. Obviously they're going to be au fait with Office 365, but make sure they've got one or two clients at least, they've got an understanding of your case management softwares and the needs of your staff, and really push them on it, which I feel we did with CTS and the two others that came down to the final three for us. We really sort of pushed about understanding what we were going to need, and I think this was obviously pre-COVID. We knew this was a possibility, that we were going to be more agile the circumstances have made us more agile, but I think it was a plan in the partners' minds anyway to get people having to do less commuting and being more flexible generally.
Yeah, so the roadmap was very much there. It was just perhaps slightly accelerated due to circumstances and
forced. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's great to hear what you say in terms of the kind of specialism. You mentioned that a couple of CTS engineers would jump on with a couple of Proclaim engineers and try and fix problems or create things to kind of improve performance wherever it may be. So yeah, I'd certainly echo that, and it's very good to hear from one of our clients. So conscious of time, obviously you don't want to keep everyone too long. We do actually have a question already. So if anyone does have any others, now is the kind of perfect time to put them to Will and I. But so basically, well, I don't know how much you can give on this, but it's talking about kind of a Citrix RDS solution compared to a kind of Microsoft Azure cloud solution. Did you look into both? Did you notice any kind of pros and cons, and why did you specifically go down the kind of private cloud route rather than Azure?
We did look at the different ones, and it was, again, for us, it was guided in conjunction with our practice management software. So the technical specs we were going to need for our environment to manage Proclaim. So it was almost the other way around for us. We said to them what would be better. They said to us, these server specs, Citrix environment works well, and that kind of made our decision for us that way.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think obviously it's down to current environment and applications, and then maximizing performance based on whether it would be through a Citrix solution or through Azure specifically. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to wrap this up now. Obviously, we're very close to past, unless there's any final questions. Myself and Will, our details are readily available. So if anyone does have anything they'd like to ask or follow up after this webinar, please feel free to do so. It's likely that either myself, Will, or colleagues of ours will get in touch for a bit of feedback, understand what you thought of the event. It looks like these are here to stay, so there may be other kind of versions of things going on in the future. So, Will, unless you've got anything to kind of add finally, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. Thank you for,
no worries, you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
And I hope everyone's taken something out of this and gained a bit of an understanding of how a firm utilizes IT and the benefits it can bring. And I think we'll call it there. And like I said, thank you very much.
No worries. Cheers, James. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Will. Speak soon.
Cheers.
Bye now. Bye.